If you think about what your profit equals, if you want to maximize your profit, which is kind of the name of the game, isn't it? Your profit equals your income minus your costs, and your income is the quantity that you sell times the price you sell it. That's sort of obvious, isn't it? So, you sell 100 for 10 quid, you've got 1,000 quid coming in, your costs are 900 quid, you've made 100 quid or whatever it is. And my question is, which one is easiest to change? If you want to make more profit, what are you going to do? And it seems to me obvious that price is easy to change. You can change your price at the click of a mouse on your website, or you can just start quoting different prices from now. But to sell more, that's much more difficult. I mean, clearly it's worth working on your sales skills, and that's great, but it's hard to do. And similarly, to cut your costs is not easy. And quite often when you cut your costs, you end up cutting your quality and then you don't sell so many. But price, you can change your price and nothing else is affected. So price is absolutely vital to get right. And that's what we're going to explore in this talk. So let's just imagine now that you are selling £100,000 worth. Let's say this is thousands of dollars, pounds, whatever it might be. And let's suppose that your costs are 90. So how much is your profit? Well, your profit is 10. You're making 10% profit there, aren't you? So that's fine. Now, what would happen if you cut your price by just 5% in order to sell more? What would happen if you cut that 100 down to 95 in order to sell more? And of course, what it's done is it's reduced your profit margin significantly. And the question is, how much more will you sell? Will you sell twice as much? If you cut your price from 100 to 95, will you double your sales? And the answer is surely not. I'd be absolutely amazed if you doubled your sales by cutting your price by only £5 in this example. So therefore, you shouldn't do it because you're halving your profit, aren't you? Your profit, if you cut your price from 100 to 95, you're only making a profit of 5 now. And you've got to sell double for it to be worth it, and you won't. So the first thing is, don't cut your price in order to sell more. But it does raise the thought, do you know what your margin is? Do you know what your costs are? Do you know whether you're making a 10% or a 20% or a 50% margin? And, so I do training courses. I drive around the country and I charge, let's say I charge 1,000 quid to do a training course. And to me, it feels like complete profit. I sort of think, well, I got a bit of petrol. It's my only cost. But actually, there are probably lots of costs I haven't thought about, like all my traveling time and all my preparation time and maintaining my photocopiers and all the marketing, my website. So often we don't think about all of our costs and we don't realize that we have this big red column here. And we think, well, I can cut my price a bit. It's fine. But actually, you're eating into a much smaller profit margin than you realize. So something to think about is, do you know what your margin is? And we're talking about your net margin, of course, not your gross margin. And just to clarify briefly the difference between those, if you buy something for £500 and you sell it for 1,000, then you've made a £500 gross profit. That's great. But when you take into account your marketing and the cost of your shop and the heating and the training of your staff and all that stuff, then you take off all of those, then you get your net profit. So your net profit is usually only 5 or 10% in most companies, whereas your gross profit, quite often you're doubling the price of something. So it's 50% gross margin if it's cost you 50 and you sell it for 100. So gross and net profit are very different. And we're talking net profit here after all of your costs. So the first thing is, don't cut your price in order to sell more, because it will cost you much more than you gain. Now, what about raising your price? What about if I raise my price by just 10% in this example? So it goes from 100 to 110. What will happen? Well, I probably will sell a bit less. A few people are going to think, well, I would have paid 100, but I'm not paying 110. A few people will do that. But what's happened to my profit margin? And the answer is I've doubled it. So I can afford to lose half my customers and still make the same money. And if I lose less than half, if I only lose 10 or 20 or 30% of my customers by putting my price up to 110, I've made more profit. And I think you'll agree that almost certainly by raising my price from 10% by 10%, I'm not going to lose half of my customers. So I've put here, would you lose half your customers? If no, you should do it. And if you think about the price of anything, I mean, I'm looking at this can of Coke I'm holding here, which was, I don't know, was it 70p? If it was 77p, would I have thought, oh, I'm not going to buy that? Or if there's a shirt for 20 quid, if it was 22 pounds, would you think, oh, I'm not going to spend 22? That 10%, we almost certainly don't notice. And I was talking to a friend of mine who does sort of building work. And if he charges somebody £600, quotes them £600, if you quoted them 660, is that really going to make a difference? There's not going to be many customers who say, I would have paid 600, but I'm not paying 660. So I don't think you're going to lose many customers at all when you put your price up by 10%. And you're doubling your profit margin if you do that.